Frank Stallone, completely underappreciated.
One of the great lesser Hollywood brothers.
Dude, he was great in Barfly.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
All right, and welcome back to another week of the Politics Unplugged podcast. I'm joined today with the Republican consultant extraordinaire, former reporter Matt Benson. Thank you very much for being here. And DJ Quinlan, the resident Democrat here, political consultant. Thank you both for being here on what has been an action-packed week in Arizona, as it is always an action-packed week in Arizona. We had the PPE, the presidential preference election this week, and I really do want to start with that. Want to get your top-line numbers from there. Obviously, there was no drama in this race. All of us could have called this race last month. We knew who was going to win. Obviously, Joe Biden won in the Democrats. Trump walks away with the Republicans. But there were some interesting numbers that we think we see in there. And Matt, let's start with you. The Republican side, they had a lot of candidates running, and Nikki Haley got over 100,000 votes. Is that a problem for Donald Trump?
It certainly is potentially a problem. I think that's what we're watching, to see relative weakness on Trump's side, and how much protest vote there is. We know there's a sizable contingent of Republicans who will not vote for Donald Trump. We saw it in the last presidential, and we may see it again with over 100,000 Republicans here in Arizona choosing a candidate other than Trump, including like 5,000 or so that chose Chris Christie, who's kind of the Republican protest candidate against Trump. So that is potentially a red flag for him going forward.
Yeah, and can Trump, can he get those voters back? Is this one of those things where it's a PPE election? Don't read too much into it. I'll leave that open to either of you to answer that.
DJ, what do you think?
Well, I usually try not to read too much into primaries, as like what they say about the general. I do think, to both of your points, it is really interesting. I mean, 100,000 votes is a lot. Yeah. When Democrats run statewide, they try to get to double digits in terms of percentage of registered Republicans. Mm-hmm. Trying to get that magic 10, 11, 12%. That's the pathway to victory. That's who voted for Nikki Haley. Mm-hmm. And so, whoever wins those voters is likely going to win the election.
Yeah. And just real quick, I agree 100%. But you're going to see consolidation on both sides. You're going to see people rally around the nominee. I would guess that the vast majority of those Nikki Haley voters, for example, will come behind Donald Trump. But in a state this closely divided, it doesn't take very many to swing the race in November.
That's a big point to make, because let's say you get 90% of those voters back. So, let's round it out at 100,000. I think it's closer to 120,000 for Nikki Haley, or 110. But let's just say it's 100,000 votes. You get 90%. It's still 10,000 votes. You don't know where they're going to go, and that's a significant number because Joe Biden won this state by just 10,000 votes 4 years ago. So, that could be a weakness maybe, DJ?
Yeah, and don't forget about the Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson voters as well.
How can we forget about Asa?
They've been out of the race for a long time.
Yeah.
I think the key thing here is it's an active process to win those voters back. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen any evidence that Donald Trump or Kari Lake are going to do that.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about Joe Biden and what you saw out of him. It didn't seem like the vibe is. It doesn't seem like they're very enthusiastic voters right now on the Democrat side. What are you taking from this PPE election?
Well, look, I mean, you had I forget what the total turnout numbers were. Probably north of 350,000 voters who turn out for a race that didn't even exist. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to judge. It's hard to draw too many conclusions about that, but certainly this election is going to come down to enthusiasm, and I think that's a developing topic, as the stakes of the election approach.
Yeah, what are the biggest problems, Matt? If how are Republicans going to attack Biden moving forward? I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot of attacks on immigration. It's, I just interviewed, the new party chair on the TV side. In that interview will air on Sunday, and she was really focused on immigration. But how effective can that line of attack be, considering the bipartisan bill that would have shut down the border, that was authored by independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema along with the Democrats and Republicans? How effective can that line of attack be from Republicans, given that they torpedoed that bipartisan bill?
I think it'll be extremely effective because I don't suspect that many voters are following that legislation very closely. I mean, think about how many words you just had to use to explain what just happened with that.
Are you saying
bill.
I'm wordy, Matt?
I'm just saying, I think your average voter is not following it that closely. And look, the images coming out of Texas this week alone, with Texas National Guardsmen being just overrun at the border.
Yeah. That video is crazy.
You're going to see those images all over your TV screens as we get closer to November, and that's a big, big problem for Joe Biden, especially in a state like Arizona. Yeah,
what's Joe Biden do? Does he turn it back on them again and say, when you start getting attacked on this, like, I agree, but we had a bill to shut down the border? I mean, that's not wordy to say that.
That's where I kind of respectfully disagree with Matt. I mean, I do think that voters are paying enough attention to that because it has been actively in the news every single day, especially here in Arizona. The fact that the Republicans turned away from that bill, I think, is going to continue to be very damaging for them on that issue. We heard this in 2018. We heard it in 2020. We heard it in 2022, that immigration is going to be this big thing. And obviously, there's a real problem down there. But I do think voters are sophisticated enough to understand who's trying to do something about it and who's not.
And what do you think of, Biden's attempts to sway and win, Latino voters back? We have seen over the course of the past few years more and more Latino voters moving towards Trump's direction. And I know in Arizona, I mean, some of that can be attributed to Trump's attempts just 4 years ago to make a real effort to reach out to that block of voters and start communicating with them. How important is that block of voters going to be in this election? It's that question we have. I mean, Matt knows we would go over that question every election cycle. How important are they going to be this year? And, can Biden kind of stop the hemorrhaging there from Latino voters from moving over to the Republican side?
Yeah, it's a critical electorate. There's no which way around it. And it's more and more a swing electorate. So, Democrats have to show up to get the Latino vote. Republicans have to show up to get the Latino vote. I see a lot more effort on the Democratic side to try to win those voters. I do think there's a lot of things that are happening with the Republican Party today, including in the legislature, that are going to be really damaging to Latino voters, their ability to win Latino voters. I also think SB 1070 caused generational damage to the Republican brand in Arizona. But I do think that Democrats have to work really hard to win those votes.
And Matt, what's your take on that? I mean, what's Trump got to do to continue to win that block of voters over?
I think the polling suggests that Joe Biden has a real problem with Latino voters, especially Latino men, voters of color in general. I think it's fascinating when you see the erosion of support, from Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton to Joe Biden. I don't think anybody's quite figured out why the numbers have gone down as precipitously as they have over the last 4 years, let's say. But I'm assuming a lot of it is economic and inflation in particular, and frustration with people just feeling like they can't get ahead. And I think you're going to see from Donald Trump a purely economic message.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next. I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, DJ. One of the president's biggest hurdles is reminding people that the numbers with the economy are pretty good right now. I know in Arizona, I think it's the latest report was 4.2% unemployment. That's really low still. You look national at other indicators, Dow Jones is up. These kinds of things. How come so many voters are feeling uneasy right now about the economy?
Yeah, it's a lagging indicator. We're seeing increased consumer confidence across the board, especially in Arizona, on the economy. But, because we went through a period of inflation globally, and as a reminder, America's in a lot better position than our counterparts across the world. It's a little bit of a lagging indicator. So it's a tricky dynamic. But ultimately, there's 15 million new jobs. The typical thing you say is, are you better off 4 years or better off now than you were 4 years ago? Well, 4 years ago, we were in a pretty tough spot. And since then, we've kind of had a pretty miraculous recovery. And it's not been easy. It's not been, smooth. But, a lot of the progress we've made, Joe Biden can be thanked for it.
Yeah, let me get your take, Matt. I mean, typically, if you look historically at past elections, you look at the economic indicators right now, man, any president would be tough to beat with these economic indicators, but not the case right now. Why is that?
Well, I think it tells you something about how those economic indicators are actually playing out, in people's homes. And so, yes, the stock market is sky high right now. That's great if you own stock. A lot of people don't. They're not in the market. They're not feeling those benefits, but they are paying, at the pump. They are feeling the, increased prices when they go to the store, or, they buy food or anything else they need. Rent is up. We're all familiar with the story, right? And so, I think here's the bottom line. The voters aren't wrong, okay? Yeah. It's incumbent on the candidates to make the case for why, their policies have benefited voters. You can't just, look at it from a perspective of like, oh, the voters just don't get it.
It's also a bad message to send to voters too, like, yeah.
Well, and that's exactly why you had Joe Biden here this week, talking about the $8.5 billion that they're pumping into Intel.
Well, and he also focused a lot on Hispanic when they're talking to Latinos, the unemployment rates under Joe Biden versus his predecessor, Donald Trump. He spoke a lot about that.
Latinos, blacks, Asian Americans, across the board, the unemployment rate is lower than it was under Donald Trump.
All right, let's move on to the kind of final topic here. I want to talk a little bit about party infrastructure. I know it's a little bit in the weeds, but that's why we have the podcast, to get into the weeds here. I want to know how important infrastructure is, party infrastructure and money is in close races like this. I mean, I think the average voter may not understand how important that is. And the reason I'm asking about this is he's looking at some recent numbers. Q4, the end of the fourth quarter, Democrats, I think, had a 10-to-1 spending advantage here in Arizona. It's similar on the national level. And now we're hearing that the portion of the RNC, there's reports that the portion of the RNC donations are going to cover former President Donald Trump's legal bills. They may not be able to help out the National Party, Republican RNC may not be able to help out locally in a swing state here as much as they maybe could have if they weren't spending that money on legal bills. How important is infrastructure here, and are Republicans facing a big disadvantage here? Open up to any one of you who want to start here.
The obvious question is it's a huge problem. Okay. The Arizona is going to be decided by a whisker one way or the other, and party infrastructure is what helps make the difference when it comes to that turnout. So it is potentially decisive. Look, there are so many unknowns over the next 6 months. Okay. Yeah. I mean, my question is just like, how many voters have just decided they think, for example, they just think that Joe Biden's too old?
Yeah.
Okay. For right or wrong, they have made that decision. And if that is the case, those people are going to be very difficult to persuade. I don't know how you would convince them that no, in fact, the oldest president in U.S. history is not too old. And yeah, I think that, so if that is the case, it almost doesn't matter how much money you have. You can't move those people.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, and this is just sort of a jump ball election, then yes, the fact that the Republicans are more or less broke, that is, again, likely to be decisive.
Yeah, because I think it comes down to a small group of persuadable voters. I agree with Matt. We don't have to go down this. I mean, it's not a hot take to say we're in a polarized society. We are. And I think most people do make up their mind pretty early on this stuff, but it does come down to a small group of, maybe voters out there who are persuadable. You go back a few years to the Ducey Cinema voter. You go back to the voters who voted for, like in the gubernatorial race, who voted for Kim Yee for treasurer but didn't cast a ballot in the gubernatorial race or voted for Katie Hobbs, maybe voters like that. What say you?
Well, I'll tell you, just going back a little over a year now to 2022, I worked on Attorney General May's race. She won by 280 votes out of 2.6 million.
Yeah.
So I happen to, have seen firsthand on any given Saturday where there were canvases of volunteers going out knocking on doors, the exact evidence of what made the difference in that race. And I just have a sneaking gut suspicion that this year, this election cycle, it's going to be, a gut-wrencher and close. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that the advantage is on our side in terms of the field infrastructure that is carried over from Senator Kelly's last 2 elections and, last presidential and last midterm. There's a strong field infrastructure on the Democratic side.
I will say that, and I think Time Magazine has a big piece on it this week, where they interview dozens of party operatives on both sides and campaign folks and pollsters, and they basically, the consensus is like, unless something markedly changes the current dynamic, Joe Biden will lose. Mm-hmm. And, I think there was a number of factors involved in that. But again, I come back to, like, something is going to have to happen to shake up this race, and it could happen from a legal standpoint involving, Donald Trump, or it could be something with Joe Biden, or something economic, or some event we can't foresee.
And most of the time, it's something that you don't foresee, and sometimes it's like one of those things, like something happens, then it just kind of builds on itself, in these races.
But the current path bodes poorly for the current president.
Well, yeah. I'm still waiting for the red wave of 2022, so we'll see.
It's coming.
It's just late.
It's just very slow.
All right, we'll wrap it up right there. I want to thank you both for being here. But since this is beginning of March Madness, a sport that I used to love as a kid, but I can't watch college basketball anymore. Just can't. Anyway, who do you guys got winning the big tournament, Matt?
Let's go with we'll go with the Wildcats. How about that hometown team, right?
Oh, your hometown, not mine. Oh, wow. How about Sun Devil, man?
I hear you. I'll go with the Arizona team. I think the Wildcats have as good a shot as anybody in a wide open year.
Plus, and I won't get into it, but Lute Olson used to coach my Iowa Hawkeyes, and U of A stole them and broke a young kid's heart in Iowa way, way back in the day.
Not that you're bitter.
No, or I hold on to grudges. DJ, who do you got?
Hey, I'm just going to be loyal ASU and say not U of A.
Awesome. Love that. I love that pick. You're taking the field over U of A. Yeah. Smart man. We'll end it right there. I want to thank you both for stopping by here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome to the back half of the Politics Unplugged podcast. Thanks for sticking with us. As always, I'm joined by Colin, producer extraordinaire. Yeah. Man, it's been a long week, dude. I am tired.
It has been a long week.
I've said that for the past 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm starting to get concerned.
I'm sure it'll get all much easier once we get closer to November.
I think so. I think it'll get easier when we go through that 110-degree spell in the summer that's rapidly approaching. Things will die down a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's always a long week for you when you end up with these, the presidential visits and all that sort of thing.
Oh, man, a little behind the curtain stuff there for people who don't know. These covering presidential visits is such a giant pain in the ass.
Yes.
It reminds me of the old saying, is the juice worth the squeeze? And sometimes I wonder if it is, because it demands a lot of resources, a lot of time. And as a journalist, as a reporter, out there, you don't get any one-on-one questions with the president. You're standing out at the event like hours before they show up.
If it's a noon event, you're probably there by 9 at the latest. Yeah. Completely in place, locked down, and then you have to leave for the security sweep. Yeah. And then you stand around waiting for the president to come out, wave, say a few things, and leave. Mm-hmm. And you would have gotten just as much from sitting back in the newsroom and watching it on a feed. Yeah. It takes a lot out of you. It's a lot for.
Well, I mean, I have covered presidential visits where you get there, you get settled when they want you to, because I always went there again super early. Yeah. And then you get notice. Okay, the president has just left D.C.
Yes.
And you're like, oh my. Yes. Oh my. And granted, Air Force One can can boogie.
Yeah.
And they can crank that baby up.
They don't circle because of traffic.
No, they don't
Traffic
circle.
circles because of them.
Yeah, and they go as fast as they want to, or as fast as they can, up to a point, I suppose.
But Biden was on time, if not early.
Yeah, strange
for most things, and that is not typical.
No, that's very untypical.
It's far more frequent that whoever the president is has an event in like Vegas, and then they're coming here, and you're waiting for them to show up, and that's when you get the word that they've hit the tarmac in Vegas.
Yeah, and because like most of my experience covering state government, we call that like kind of like governor time.
Yeah.
Because, governors start their days out like whenever, right? And it's all planned out. And if they're a minute late here, a couple minutes late there, it just keeps building up.
And
it all snowballs. So by the time you hit the afternoon, all those minutes have added up into 20, 30 minutes late and stuff like that. Yes. So it's shocking to me when you see executives show up on time.
Yes. And in our business, that if it's a 4 o'clock event, and we have a 3 o'clock show, a 4 o'clock show, a 5 o'clock show, a 6 and a 6:30. You're probably supposed to be live in that 4 o'clock show when he's supposed to be appearing, but then when it becomes 4:30 and he's not there, and it bumps to 4:45. Then it starts becoming a giant pain in your ass.
Yeah. I always love doing those live hits when you're just waiting there and you're the only guy on the podium that's talking.
Yes.
Like all the other reporters get it and they're probably like, yeah, but you can't help but feel if you're the one doing it, it's like, oh, they're all judging me, everything I say. Why are they all looking at me?
Well, and you also realize that since you're on a podium and you're about a foot away from the camera, that you look like the Mighty Oz in the live shot. Everyone back in the newsroom's going, why doesn't he back off from the camera, man?
Yeah, no,
and you can't. You're standing there on the
that literally happened to me the last time Biden was he was in Tempe. They wanted a shot for the noon, and the riser was so packed. I think my face was 6 inches at most from the camera.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is gonna look weird. I'm on the mic, talking back to the station here. It's like, this is gonna look weird. And they're like, yeah, it's a little close. We'll leave it up to you if you want to do the hit. And I'm like, I'm not killing this hit. That has to come from the bosses.
Yeah.
Let's do this,
I leave it to you. But please decide that it's too weird.
Please.
And having been a producer in that situation, we're not going to decide it's too weird.
No.
We've got the 2 minutes to fill. We're filling it, and we're going to sit there and laugh at how silly you look 6 inches away from the camera.
We'll sit there. We're going to fill it with 2 minutes of your eyeball and nostril.
Yes, we're texting back to the newsroom. Did you see Dennis?
Did you see his eyeball? I think it's his left nostril. What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, memories.
Yeah.
Memories.
Yeah, we always enjoy those.
Oh, I'm glad you finally admitted that you're laughing at us. That makes me feel well. That makes me
absolutely.
feel well.
Yeah. I mean, we don't go out of our way to set that up, but when it appears.
No, when it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Hey, man, let's have some fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, there was a really great story in the Arizona Agenda that published Friday morning, and we got a little heads up on the video, and it's a story on AI, and we got a heads up on that video, and I showed it to you, and like just completely blown away.
Yeah.
And what this is an AI deepfake video of Carrie Lake saying you should subscribe to the Agenda. They're great, blah blah blah, and then you're kind of like, what is going on? And then this image of Carrie Lake says, by the way, this is a deep fake. This is a totally fake video. And they did this to show kind of the dangers. Is that the right word? Or
I think it probably
problems
is.
That like for voters are going to have to wade through as we're about to get inundated with political information. And some of this is going to be AI generated deep fakes.
And what's really jarring is for the last few years, we've all seen those videos of Carrie Lake where she's got that room, and a lot of that's standard. People have their Zoom spot where they do these videos. And so that's what they use as the base for this. And it looks just like every single other Carrie Lake video. You know, she's in the same spot with the flag over her shoulder, and the lighting's the same, and the focus is a little soft, and it looks exactly like one of her videos, and it's entirely fake.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really quite stunning. And every now and then, you know, you there are these issues that pop up, and you say like, well, eventually this is going to happen. And this issue particularly is like, oh, these are going to get really good at some point. Well, we're here now.
Yeah. And as Hank from the Agenda pointed out, it's going to be even better by November. They're improving so rapidly that what you see now, and what you see now looks amazing. Yeah. What you get in a few months will be even better.
And some of the tips they were giving for voters, and this is going to be a real thing moving forward. Yeah. You know, it's like, what is reality? What can you trust? And it's not a metaphorical thing; it's a real thing. Like, you know, moving forward on this, we've already heard deepfake audio recordings, and the audio side is more advanced than the video side. Yeah. We heard a deepfake audio recording of Biden telling people to go up and show at the polls on Wednesday, and of course, elections are held on a Tuesday. Yes.
And our own Susan Campbell from On Your Side did a story about these sort of things, and for her stand-up within the story, she entered her script into an online AI thing, and it just took a few quick samples of her voice, not saying what was in the script, but just talking, and then it generated her voice reading the script, and it sounded just like her. Yeah. And it was working off very, very little input from her voice, and it was the cheap, free online version. It wasn't a good version. It was the quick, dirty, do it for free online version.
Well, and that's the point I think Hank was making about this. That this stuff is going to be available for everybody, and you don't have to be particularly savvy when it comes to technology to be able to do this. No. And a lot of this stuff is going to be generated not by parties, not by campaigns, by just rogue agents. Like maybe, you know, a young kid who's playing a prank and thinks it's funny, or, you know, somebody, you know, who is just very emotionally invested in politics that's got a Twitter handle and a TikTok page.
Or somebody in Russia who's looking to jack up someone else's election.
Here you go again. Russia. Yeah. No, but in all seriousness. Theoretically, foreign nationals.
Yes, foreign nationals. It'd be really easy for them.
So and it's one of those things too, as on our side of the business, you know, as journalists, we try to report the facts. We do the best we can. Yeah. Wow. Now we're going to have to be taking an extra step now.
The level of scrutiny you have to give to video now is amazing. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And, you know, and Hank pointed out in the show that there are a few little tells you can look for, like watching the lips really closely. But he said, in a few months, that probably won't work either.
That may not work. Even if it does, the other point he was making that was really interesting was, how does it work on a 10-second clip? Because the clip that they showed was like a good, minute and a half, 2 minutes long. Yeah. And you can really watch it and kind of study it. Yeah. You see something on X, or any of the social, threads or any social media platform, and it's just a 10-second clip. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, we saw, what was it, 15 years ago, like a really bad doctored Barack Obama, allegedly admitting to being born in Kenya. It was a totally bad.
It was a horrendously done video where they had edited all the words together, but they didn't even cover the edits. Yeah. You know, in TV, you can splice things together like that, but you use video to cover all of it, and it makes the audio edits less noticeable. They didn't even do that.
No,
there was an edit on every single word jumping all over.
It was terrible.
And it still fooled people. We still had people saying, why aren't you reporting on the speech where he admitted he's from Kenya? And like, you look at it and think, how can anyone over 5 think this is legit? And people did.
Yeah. And I think the message moving forward is like, man, you know, already so much is asked of voters. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about what voters this and that. Like Matt Benson said on the earlier, he's like, probably a lot of voters have already made up their mind. It's because, a lot of voters don't have the time to keep up, to study all the issues, and it's an emotional thing. But now you're asking voters to do an extra step, just like we're being asked to do an extra step. We can't, nor do we want to put a deep fake out there, but it's going to happen. Whether it's here, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox News, whether it's the major networks, it's going to happen.
I think we've also hit a point now where a good portion of the voting bloc just hates politics in general. The level of discourse has gotten so bad that people don't put the time in because it just makes them angry and sad.
Yeah, and again, asking them to do more work. Man, most Americans, they got a job, they got family, they're working.
Yeah.
And then now you're asking them, it's like, okay, now you gotta take this extra step and try to decide whether this is a real video or not.
Yeah.
That is just nuts.
Yes.
It's just nuts. So be careful moving forward out there, folks.
Yeah. Yes. We don't know that Carrie Lake is necessarily that big an Arizona Agenda fan that she would be taping a.
Well, considering she keeps asking who they are at press conferences, which I think she knows who they are, but I think it's.
Yeah, seeing the fake video and not, at first not realizing it was a fake, where she was talking about her love for the Arizona Agenda, seemed a little out of character, perhaps.
Yeah. Her supporting any mainstream news,
Yes.
whatever would be out of character.
Yes.
Let's wrap up with some basketball talk.
Yeah.
It's March Madness.
Yeah.
God, I don't want to come off as the guy that just dislikes most things. The guys that sit in the balcony for the puppet, Statler and Waldorf. But man, every March I'm just reminded how much I used to love college basketball, and now I can't watch it. It's unwatchable.
I love the tournament. The tournament's a lot of fun. And literally the first men's college game I watched this year was probably the quarterfinals of the Pac-12 tournament. It's
unwatchable.
And I'm a huge basketball guy. I mean, I have NBA League Pass. I'm watching 2 or 3 NBA games a night, and I don't watch college basketball at all. And I could name more college women players at this stage than I could college men's players.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids many moons ago, college basketball was huge. You knew the players.
Yeah.
And there was continuity there.
Growing up, I could name you the starting 5 for, UCLA.
More
than I could for the Lakers.
Or
probably.
like, you remember like the matchups, it'd be a month out and with like someone like a Ralph Sampson and Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
Like they'd be previewing that game for a month, or and it felt like at that point, I think like college basketball may or may not have been as popular or more popular than the NBA.
Yeah,
and it has plummeted.
It has.
It is going the way of horse racing, where like horse racing is basically the Kentucky Derby and everything else.
Yeah.
It's like the Kentucky Derby and then like, degenerates at an OTB site or at the track,
Yes, we care about the Kentucky Derby and the next one in the Triple Crown.
The Belmont. No, the Belmont's the third. It's the Preakness.
So we care about the Kentucky Derby, and then we care a little less about the Preakness. And then whether we care about the Belmont depends entirely on whether the winner of the Kentucky Derby won the Preakness.
Yes.
Because then maybe it's a Triple Crown. But if it's 2 different horses, then we go back to that.
American Pharoah. Won a lot of money with American Pharoah that year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and dabble in some horse betting from time to time.
Yeah. Growing up, I would occasionally go to Santa Anita, and then moved off to to the Northwest, and you quickly find that other horse tracks are not Santa Anita.
Yeah, what's the? Well, no. I'll tell you though too. If you ever get a chance, man, go to Del Mar.
Del Mar, yeah,
that's great.
Track.
Beautiful track.
I've been to the facility. I haven't been there for racing.
I mean, I know it's hard when you go to that part of the country in the summertime from here and just not hang out at the beach. But if you're around there,
it's pretty much at the beach.
Yeah. And
take a couple hours.
Stay a couple hours. It is a gorgeous site. A lot of history there. good fun. Yeah.
I never saw the races at Hollywood Park, but I did see the police on their synchronicity tour at Hollywood Park.
Wasn't that Chuck Bukowski's favorite, horse racing track or something like that? Because Hollywood Park, from what it's described to me as, would be a place that Charles Bukowski would go hang out at.
I mean, it's now the site of SoFi Stadium, and I don't know that there are too many people who miss it.
Yeah, probably not. I still do enjoy going out to Turf Paradise every now and then.
I haven't been there in years, but I mean, the horse races, and if one can leave the ethical end of it aside, well, horse races are a lot of fun. It's gotten harder for me because it's
I'll share the story after. It's a funny, not funny story about what we're alluding to on that. Yeah. But yeah, man, back to the basketball thing. I know there's some coworkers that put out the brackets every year here. Yeah. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't know where to start. And, again, there was a time when I used to watched a ton of college basketball.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, but I still expect to win this every year. Well, I think there are 90 entries this year. And as we came in here, I checked, and I'm 16th right now.
Okay, that's not bad.
Doing okay,
that's not bad.
Although I had New Mexico going to the Sweet 16, and as I came down here, they were getting thumped. So
the only thing I know, again, I was just really hoping Long Beach State could have upset the U of A Wildcats.
It was a fun story there for a while. It looked good up until just shy of halftime, and then and then Cinderella's carriage turned back into a pumpkin.
Yeah, and then Kentucky, the coach there, Calipari.
Yeah.
He should probably think about avoiding that state for a little while.
Yeah. Didn't go well.
They're very upset from what I'm reading.
Yeah.
But be that as it may. Have to wrap up there. I hope everybody is having a great bracket right now, and nobody's getting their brackets busted.
Did you pick a winner? Do you have a national champ?
No, I don't. I'm really terrible at that.
That feels un-American.
No, I'm terrible at it. If you remember back when we first started the podcast, I had the Buffalo Bills winning the Super Bowl. How'd that work out for me?
No, not great. No, not great.
But I think you might have been. I think you did pick the Chiefs.
I probably did.
Yeah, 'cause you just went chalk, which was the smart thing to do.
Yeah, it's chalk for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have UConn this year, winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
They won it last year.
Yeah.
We'll win it again.
Now I will watch
other team and came up with a really good reason why I didn't think they would win. With Connecticut, I couldn't come up with a reason why they wouldn't.
I will watch the women's tournament.
Yeah.
Hawkeyes, Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
If you're an Iowa guy, this could be a good year.
Yeah, take the boy out of Iowa, but not the Iowa out of the boy, I suppose.
Yeah. Sadly.
All right, everybody. Hope you have a good bracket and enjoy an amazing weekend. And we'll see you next week with more Politics Unplugged.
Yeah, see you then.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.